Hello everyone. Here we are at the World War II era battleship, the USS Alabama, for a nice tour. The Alabama is the newest battleship that did not see any service after World War II and was not upgraded. The Iowa class of 4 battleships had a couple of them upgraded in the 50s and 60s, and all of them were upgraded and put in service in the 80s. So this makes the Alabama a really excellent World War II time capsule. Now, this ship is part of the Battleship Park Complex, which includes admission to the USS Drum submarine, which you can also see on this channel, and a nice collection of aircraft and tanks as well. Now, coming up on the aft part of the ship, you can see the catapult and the crane for the aircraft that these ships carried during World War II. They were seaplanes that were launched with this catapult device, and they were fished out of the water with a crane later. Here's a classic 40mm gun turret. You see these all over the place in any kind of World War II footage. And here's more of the catapult. The catapult would swing out to the starboard side for launch. Here's some nice commemorative plaques outlining the Alabama's service and showing where it went during World War II, which is pretty much the only time it served. It was decommissioned just a few months after World War II. So in addition to the big 16-inch gun turrets, there's lots of these 5-inch turrets that come in pairs. You'll see these on the Essex-class aircraft carriers and on a lot of the World War II destroyers. The overall size of the Alabama was pretty much determined by the need to mount the 3 16-inch gun mounts on the ship. And by the way, they're just installed with gravity. There's nothing locking them in place. And this top section of the forward 16-inch turret is open, so let's go inside and take a look. Couple of different plotting rooms here. Here's one friendly suggestion. The Alabama is only partially air conditioned, so it gets pretty hot on hot days, so keep that in mind. This was a really cool, comfortable day when we did this tour. Here is the very heavily armored bridge with the helm control. Unfortunately, there's no access to it these days. Back here you have the primary plotting room for navigating the ship, and also the captain's quarters. Now we're inside one of the 5-inch gun turrets that has 2 guns in it and can swivel. Right there is where the ammunition comes up. Later we'll show you where the ammunition is loaded, way down below. Here's a nice cross section showing how it's all laid out. Some nice memorabilia, including a piece of a kamikaze plane. And there's a piece of the USS Arizona. Here's an optical gun director that was used with 40mm guns. The metal sights that you see on the guns are a backup to these optical systems. Here's the first of a couple machine shops. It's pretty cool how they do actual authentic sounds in some of these spaces, simulating what it would actually sound like. Here's the bakery. And here's the galley, and up ahead some of the crew's mess. The seat locations for the crew there are wrapping around one of the gun turrets, as you can see. And here's one of the crew berthing areas. As you can see, it's pretty tight spacing. And here's the barber shop, complete with barber sounds. And if you got in enough trouble, you would find yourself here in the brig. And really improve living conditions, because this is terrible. Oops. So, as I was saying, the average sailor had pretty tough living conditions. But I will say that starting in the 1950s, the Navy really started looking hard at living conditions on ships. And for a few decades now, the living conditions have been much improved. And here's the other side of that same galley. Some of the areas where the Marine Corps soldiers lived. And this is a cool mock-up of the diving shack, where you're showing a diver in the water. And you're also showing a lot of the equipment they used, including hand air pumps.
Hey, keep that pump going. There's a man down below relying on you for his every breath. Hi there. I'm second class diver Charles Gray. We're in the middle of a repair operation. I'm acting as the tender today.
The local post office. Combat Information Center.
10 to 12 crewmen work together in this small space to keep CIC functioning. Working together, men and equipment were like a central nervous system, connecting crew with each other and with their ship. As one officer reported,
during battle, the most important job on the ship was CIC. Paul Jones, executive officer.
All right, it's time to go down in the engine room. Again, great sound effects. This is one of 4 engine rooms on the Alabama. Each engine room has some of the electrical duty and powers one of the 4 propellers. Here you have the 2 boilers for this engine room. You burn the oil and separately you send in the water to boil it, turn it into high pressure steam, sending the steam to the turbines for electrical generation and for the 4 propellers. There's the electrical turbine generator. And below us, where you're not going to be able to see it, is where the steam, once it's no longer used, is condensed back to water to be sent back to the boiler. And here is the low pressure turbine. There's both a high pressure and low pressure turbine for the propulsion system. The steam goes through the high pressure turbine first, and then the larger low pressure turbine when the steam has less energy. There's the much smaller high pressure turbine. So, since these turbines are spinning much faster than you want a propeller to spin, they have to go through reduction gears, 2 different sets working together. And then on the other side is going to be a much slower spinning propeller. And if you look down there, you'll see the white shaft heading back to one of the 4 propellers on the ship. Here's a nice diagram showing how the lower handling room and the turret for a 5-inch turret work together. Here's all the shells, and here's where they load them in, and then they go into the turret up above, like I was showing you earlier. This prevents massive explosions if one of the turrets was hit. Now we're going into one of the 16-inch turrets. Be sure to be careful around all these live 2,000-pound shells. Actually, I think they're inert. And down in this lower section is where they load the powder bags for the shots. And there's different amounts and different sizes you can do depending on how far you're shooting. Here's a little bit of the medical areas. And everyone's favorite place, the dentist's. Pretty big radio room here. And a chapel. And here's a display of different damage control equipment. Firefighting, different seawater pumps for pumping out areas that might have been hit by torpedoes. And a blacksmith shop. I hope you enjoyed this tour of this really nice piece of history.